Yes, sir. Go ahead and call the meeting in order.
Welcome to the Antelope Valley Union High School District Board of Trustees meeting. This board meeting is being recorded. Anyone wishing to observe the meeting may do so via AVUHSD's YouTube channel. Individuals may take photographs or record meetings provided the individual's conduct does not constitute a disruption, including obstructing the views of others. Those wishing to address items on the agenda and matters that are not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the AVUHSD board shall do so in person, complete a speaker form, and give it to the designee before the public comment portion of the meeting. The speaker form must be given to Ms. Orozco before the board president announces the item. Once the item has been called, we will no longer accept new cards. Ms. Orozco will call the individual's name to come up to the podium to provide their comments. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. The total time for public input on each item shall be limited to 20 minutes. Non-agendized items are limited to a total allotment of 20 minutes. Only one person is permitted to stand at the podium at a time. No speaker may relinquish a time allotment to another speaker. The district encourages members of the public to attend board meetings and to address the board concerning any item on the agenda or within the board's jurisdiction. The board does not prohibit public criticism of its policies, procedures, programs, services, acts, or omissions. Similarly, the board does not prohibit public criticism of district employees. Speakers are cautioned that no person is immune from liability for making intentionally false or defamatory comments simply because those comments are made at a public meeting. Attendees are also reminded of the board's civility policy, Policy 1313. This civility policy requires that members of the district staff will treat parents and other members of the public with respect and expect the same in return. The district is committed to maintaining disruption-free board meetings. The board will not permit any disturbance or willful interruption of its board meetings. Persistent disruption by an individual or group are grounds to terminate the privilege of addressing the board. Persistent disruption by an individual shall be grounds for the board president to terminate the individual's privilege to address the board. The district promotes mutual respect, civility, and orderly conduct among district board members, district employees, parents, and the public. The district seeks public cooperation with this endeavor.
Mr. President, if I can make a point of clarification to members of the board and to our audience joining us this evening. This is a special board meeting. Only comments on agendized items are permitted at special board meetings. So if there's any unagendized, those will have to wait until the meeting on May 18th.
Thank you, sir. All right, I'm going to give it to you, Mr. Sanchez.
Please stand with the budget. Sorry, let me do a roll call real quick. Sorry.
I'll do a roll call real quick. Ms. Corona,
Present.
Ms. McGrady,
Present.
Mr. Sanchez,
Present.
Mrs. Nguyen.
Present.
All right, Charles Hughes, present. I'm present as well, and Mr. Delgado is absent. Go ahead, Mr. Sanchez, with the pledge.
For the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
I don't know why I need to ask, but I believe there is going to be comments from the floor, so.
We have 12 comments for item 1D.
All right, outstanding. The public is invited to address the board on any agenda item. To address an item on the agenda, speaker forms must be given to the designee before the board president announces the item. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each, and a total time for public input on each item shall be limited to 20 minutes. Only one person is permitted to stand at the podium at a time. No speaker may relinquish a time allotted to another speaker. During public comments, the board listens to concerns The board may ask questions for purpose of clarification. The law prohibits the board from entering into dialogue with the public or taking action on items not on the agenda. First speaker, please.
Daniel Osborne.
Mr. Osborne, welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Osborne. I'm a business agent for Ironworkers Local 433. But today I'm here as a representative of the building trades, right? Because this agreement's not just affecting the ironworkers, it's not just affecting electricians, it's affecting everybody that works in construction, right? We're all in this together. A lot of the people you see here just came from jobs in the area, as you can tell. A lot of our senior members here, for the first 10, 15, 20 years of their career, that wasn't a luxury they had. Right, there wasn't a whole lot of work out here, and if there was, local people weren't on it. What that amounted to was typically in the construction industry, you're up at 3 a.m. to beat the morning rush. Right, you want to be on the freeway by 4. You're working 10 or more hours. You're not home till 7 or 8 at night. That's probably not an exaggeration for those of you who've done it. You're looking at 16 hours away from home for 8 to 10 hours of work. That's not a lot of time to be with your family. Right, to actually live. So these workforce agreements have really become popular up here, and we're appreciative of it. They're literally giving hours back to these guys' lives, men and women's lives every day. I mean, that's weeks in and out of the year. They're back with their families, right? In addition to that, it ensures that the people who are building your schools, your hospitals, right, buildings that your loved ones are sitting under, those buildings are built correctly, right? They're built safely, they're built efficiently. And also the people working on them are getting compensated fairly, right? Because the work we do is hard and dangerous, and no one should be shortchanged on it. So it's been a boon for the city. It's been a boon for the residents here. And it's been a boon for a lot of youngsters who've been gotten into the trades through this, right? Not just for one job, but for 25, 30-year careers in the union. They're going to be buying homes here instead of renting now, right? So everybody wins. At this point, I feel like it's a broken record. We've spoken on so many of them. So I'm here in sincere support of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Joshua Christensen. Joshua Christensen.
Welcome.
Hey, how we doing? My name is Joshua Christensen. I'm a business rep with the Southwest Mountain States Carpenters Union. We represent 65,000 men and women throughout 10 states, but more importantly, locally, we here represent 3,000 within the Antelope Valley and the surrounding areas. This is asking you guys to pass this CWA. It's right in line with the goals of the city of Palmdale and the city of Lancaster, who have come together to understand the importance of mortgage paying jobs. And that's exactly what this will do. This will create mortgage paying jobs to the workers of all trades who come and work on this project. Hats off to you guys for putting this on the docket and to advise you guys to pass this. This will be great for the community around us. To save some time, I'm going to say thank you for my time and excuse myself.
Thank you.
Nicholas Reyes.
Welcome.
Thank you. Again, my name is Nicolas Reyes. I've been a carpenter for 20 plus years. A few of the years at the beginning were at a non-union shop, and I can tell you that there's a big difference between working union and non-union. For one, it's the pay, and the other thing is the guarantee that you're going to get pay. Working non-union, sometimes I had to chase the contractor 2 or 3 weeks just to get paid for the first week of work. With this agreement, what would guarantee is that anybody and everybody that gets put on a project gets paid on time and gets paid a fair wage. Like my brother was saying, a mortgage paying salary, not, we go out there. It is a dangerous job. It's hard, it's hot, it's cold, it's dusty, it's muddy, but we love to do it. And that's why we're in the industry. And we're just, want to make sure that we get our fair share. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Crispin Carrasco,
Good afternoon. My name is Crispin Carrasco. I also am a union carpenter. I just want to emphasize what my coworkers say that I've been working in this environment for 20 years. I had to travel so many places, so many miles. I had to spend so much time without my family. So when we have bills like this, they're going to bring jobs to us locally. This is very important for us because it can change our life. We can dedicate more time to our family and everybody, and we can bring more money to our community because our money stays locally. So it's very important for us. We have local jobs. So I'm here in a full support of the community workforce agreement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean Muir, Sean Muir,
Welcome.
How you doing? So you've heard from the BAs, right here from a local resident, grew up here in 1970. I've worked on a lot of schools out here. I'm a certified welder, and not only that, I'm a union carpenter. I helped build Lancaster Eastside High School. I helped build Pete Knight High School. The union's done a lot for me. It's actually helped me pay for my house, give me good benefits. The CWA is definitely in the right direction that we need to go as a city to support our growth in the community. But without that, we have non-union contractors that we compete with daily to get these jobs. And if that, you get a non-skilled worker, I took 3 years and went to school. I took another 3 years, became a certified welder. I'm one in the top of my field. I've had 17 welders under my belt under 2 hospitals. So I actually was a welding quality control foreman at Palmdale Regional. So you not only get the experience, you get to spend that money here in my community. Growing up here, I grew up on 90th West and E8. So going from baling hay to being a certified welder and a union carpenter, in my book, is a win-win. So we support this CWA in all aspects. So I thank you for your time and enjoy.
Thank you very much.
Jerry Bloch,
Welcome.
Hello. Thank you, board, for considering this. I have been a resident here in the Antelope Valley since 1961. My dad moved me here. I didn't have a lot of choice, but I went through the school system, the West Side School, Joe Walker Junior High, and I went to Quartz Hill High School. Got a quality education, I thought, but I decided I wanted to be, I guess, something that somebody that worked with their hands. And I had a friend of mine who I grew up with said, hey, come on out and try, at the time it was drywall. And I started working in that. Built houses at the time. We started there, and I thought about it, and I said, you know what? You build a house, you can afford to buy one. And that seemed fair. But they took that away from the guys that build houses, mostly. It's really hard for a guy nowadays to afford to buy a house. And to me, like they said, jobs that pay a mortgage that a guy can afford to live in a house that he owns is, to me, an important thing. People, not only guy, and I use that term, I mean a person, but and we see more and more diversity in our trade, which is always a good thing to have. So a lot of carpenters came to the Antelope Valley to buy a house when I started back in the trades in the late 70s, and it's been a place that they could afford to buy. Union carpenters could afford to live here, and they would do the drive. And to bring in the good wages, along with the ability to have health care for their families, the kids that go to these schools, their families will be able to take better care of them. They'll have a pension to look forward to, which to me is, it should be there for everybody. Healthcare should be there for everybody. A pension, some way to live with dignity in your old age should be there for everybody. So this is one way to help ensure that for the people that are going to do the work on these schools. And I think their kids can look and say, hey, you know what, my dad worked on, some of these local schools, and that brings a sense of community continuity, I think, to the community. So again, thank you for considering it, and I encourage you to pass it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Herbert Hardy,
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Herbert Hardy. I'm a proud union carpenter and also a business rep with the Southwest Mountain States Regional Council of Carpenters. And I stand before you. I joined the union by a CWA/PLA at the LAX project. And, after serving the country for 6 years, I had no option. And the trades, they gave me an option to utilize those skills I learned in the Navy and be able to be a productive member of society, having the good wages, the benefits, and the retirement, be able to retire with dignity. And I actually got to work on this building here that we're standing in. I installed all the doors. And I just think that passing the CWA is beneficial to the community. It brings local jobs to the community. It allows guys second chance opportunities, veterans, people that come from disadvantaged workforce. And I strongly encourage you guys to pass it so we can keep some of these jobs locally. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And thank you for your service. Go Navy.
Greg Lewis,
Welcome.
Board, I really want to thank you guys for considering the CWA out here. We've been hearing about how beneficial it is for the people that live out here. And I'm just going to want to reiterate how life-changing it's been for our members of Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Local 761. For years and years, they never got work out here, and they lived out here because this is the only place they could afford to live. And they're spending their whole lives driving down to LA. And then what happens is when they get workforce agreements in LA, they have the zip code requirements to hire their local hands. And then the people out here are getting bypassed. So when you guys implement these workforce agreements up here, it's just life-changing for the craftspeople that live out here. And so I just want to say I really encourage you guys to approve this. And I want to thanks for considering it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mitch Klein,
Hello, honorable board members, superintendent and staff. My name is Mitch Klein. I'm with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 11. I'm a business representative. And I want to speak in favor of the community workforce agreement because it will do so much for the community. It's good for our kids that might not be college bound. It gives them an opportunity for a great career. We have top apprenticeship programs, and not just for our kids to get them off the street and give them good careers, but also the people that live in our community, the good citizens that need a career or out of work or might have lost their jobs. This is good for everyone. And the good thing about this too is it does not discriminate between union and non-union. Everyone can bid on this job. Everyone is welcome to work on a community workforce agreement. There's no discrimination there. Doesn't mean it's all union. As a matter of fact, what I'd like to do is have all the tradesmen in here. Can you please stand? And to give you an idea of how many local people, how many would like jobs in our own area and work in our own area. Thank you very much. You can see that there's quite a few. I represent over 500 members in this area, plus all the families. And this is a good thing. It benefits everyone. It's a win-win for all. We have the top-notch apprenticeship programs. We're professional. We're expertise in our fields. And you could see all the trades that are here that are looking for for an opportunity. So I want to thank you all for considering this, and I hope we get your vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris Hannon.
Good evening, Honorable Board President, Honorable Board Members, Superintendent and staff. My name is Chris Hannon with the Los Angeles Orange County's Building Construction Trades Council. I'd like to also speak in support of the Community Workforce Agreement. I can tell you we've put a lot of time into developing an agreement that's tailored for Antelope Valley Union High School District and the communities that the district services. I want to compliment your superintendent for doing a good job on behalf of the district and looking out for the district's best interest. This agreement, like many of the comments prior, is going to maximize those construction projects for local residents. First priority to go to work on the projects are district residents, also veterans, also graduates of our apprenticeship readiness program that we use to introduce community members to the construction trades. With all the community workforce agreements that we have in the Antelope Valley now, we've been able to help hundreds of graduates from our apprenticeship readiness programs find a trade that they can be proud of, a trade that they can buy a home here in the Antelope Valley. This agreement's going to help, as some of my brothers said before, it's going to help members work closer to home, to spend more time with their family, to stay off the highway and be able to work on something that they can drive by every day and show their kids, hey, I helped build that high school, or I helped improve that gymnasium, something they could be proud of in their community. This agreement sets the highest standards for training. That's what we want, because we want our community members to get into the best training program, one that they could have a career. You want the best quality workmanship for the tax dollars that are going towards those projects. You want the best job done with your construction dollars, and this agreement's going to do that. I'm going to be here when you discuss. If you have any questions about the agreement, I was the negotiator on our side, and again, want to compliment your superintendent for doing such a good job on behalf of the district. And again, we wholeheartedly support the agreement and look forward to bringing in many, many residents into our programs. Look forward to giving you the best craftsmanship anywhere in the world. And we're going to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Luke Brand.
In the interest of saving time, I prepared a short statement. My name is Luke Brand, business representative from the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 12. I'm also a previous pupil of this district and a construction agent for the unions that work in other school districts in this valley, in the Antelope Valley internally here. I'm here tonight to advocate for the use of these community workforce agreements, as I've seen the benefits for your constituents and their families, members whom we represent. So thank you for your time and consideration of approval on this agenda motion. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Kathy McLaren.
Welcome.
Good evening, board members and all your staff and superintendent. And like many of these workers here, you've already heard what this is going to do to their lives. But what I want to bring up is opportunities. Opportunities are going to come from the fact that once you do this community workforce agreement, it lets all these business managers and all these trades know that work is coming, which means time to go out and get other residents and train them up, bring them here, and also the opportunity for these men and women to not be on the freeway all the time and be able to say, yes, I can be a coach for your team. Yes, I can help out after school. One thing we pride ourselves on, because I do business development, so I work for labor and management, working together, it is to make sure that we are a part of this community. You'll see IBW Nika around all over the place because our members put into a fund to give back, because for us, it's about making sure the community our members live and work in is a safe community with lots of opportunity. And we show that by being a part of everything that we can be a part of. Me, for one, I get in public service, do a lot of different things for the community, and I always have my IBW brothers and sisters along with me, helping me out. So this is one of the best opportunities that we can have, plus giving those opportunities to those kids that might want to work with their hands and young women. We all need to do a better job in letting young women know how, and single moms, how they can take care of their family with a union job career. And they have many to choose from. So it's an opportunity to educate them, open that up, and please, please support this community workforce agreement. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Escobedo.
Good evening, board members, supervisors, council members. My name is Johnny Escobedo. I'm a business agent for Iron Workers Local 416, and I'm also a delegate for LA Building Trades. You've seen our members here, all trades. You've seen what it'll bring to the community. You've watched them stand. I actually have an instructor from our apprenticeship here because he is a member of this community with us. But what we haven't heard is reinvesting in our own community. You know what? We talk about reinvesting. What better way to reinvest than to keep it a local hire? You know, that's the way that we keep things growing, by keeping our money in our own community. So thank you for your time, your consideration in this matter, and we look forward to seeing you more often. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes all of our public comments.
Outstanding. All right. We'll move to D, approval of the community workforce agreement by and between the Antelope Valley Union High School District and the Los Angeles and the Orange Counties Building and Construction Trades Council and the Signature Craft Council and the unions for construction, repair, upgrade, renovation, modernization, expansion, rehabilitation, and improvement of work. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the community workforce agreement. Mr. Sanchez, I'm going to ask you to make this very important motion, a motion that, if passes, will bring us in line with the major entities in this valley regarding community workforce agreements. Agreements that ensure our local union professionals work on projects in their own community, keep our tax dollars local, and spare our local union tradesmen and women from their long commutes outside this valley. Will you please make that motion, sir?
I will gladly make a motion.
Second,
Second.
discussion. I'll go to you, Ms. McGrady.
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to say thank you to all of you for coming tonight. It's very important to us to have you here, and we appreciate that very much. I personally believe this is an incredibly important thing for us to do. I'm disappointed that we just got it. I didn't know we were going to vote on this till yesterday. So we have not seen the agreement. I haven't been able to do my due diligence, which makes me sad because I usually try to really take my job and do it right. And I don't feel like I've had the opportunity to do that here. With that being said, I believe in this and I think it's really important. I would like to see us have our people work here. I would like to have you working with us on our schools. There are a lot of things, I don't even know what I don't know. So I'm having trouble with questions. But one thing that did come to me while some of you were speaking, I was a teacher, and as a teacher joining the union, you simply pay your dues. And I am pretty sure that's not quite the situation to try to get into a workers union, but I'm not quite sure, like, as I'm trying to think, okay, of the opportunities for our students and how they get from being a student and getting into the workforce with you. How difficult is that? I mean, is that something that we could see that would happen? Or, yeah, thank you, help me.
Absolutely. And Mr. Henn and I have had a long, probably 3 or 4 year dialogue. I'm glad we're to this point today, but the beginning is a class called MC3, Multi-Core Craft Construction. And that's something that we are looking at implementing at RX Paris High School and then expanding from there. We also have a construction class at RX Paris High School that works with the carpenter's trade, not too far from there. So yes, the goal is to work more closely with the local union halls to connect our students with these opportunities and make sure that they're prepared going in.
Okay, just one more quick question,
Sure.
because I know I don't want to take up the whole time, but is there a possibility with adult ed and with our career tech that we could do some things there so that would be open to other students? rather-
Absolutely,
Okay.
with-
Just wait.
especially with adult ed.
It's a coming. I
Yeah.
guarantee it.
Okay. Well, once again, thank you. Thank you for being here, and we appreciate it very much.
So let me correct the record. And I'm tired of hearing this, that I didn't have a chance to read this, and we're all board of directors, and I'm gonna say this. We got this sent to us yesterday. My job is to look at an agenda. My job is to read the materials that's emailed to me. And the bottom line is, I'm tired of hearing this. I didn't get to read this. I didn't get to see this. I'm done with that. That's my statement. I'll go to you, Miss
Well,
Nguyen.
I need to answer that. Sorry.
You-
We could have
Did you get an
voted,
email?
we could have voted next week
Okay.
and had the
Did you get
opportunity
an
to really
email?
go through it and look at it. That was.
Ms.
my
McGrady,
only-
did you get an email
Yesterday.
yesterday? Did you have time from yesterday to today to read that email?
I did not.
Okay, shame on you. Ms. Nguyen.
Well, a lot of people know that I'm union. My husband and I spent 2.5 years after he was fired as an air traffic controller. We spent 2.5 years helping our brothers and sisters find jobs, and we didn't quit until we found every last one a job. We spent our retirement helping these people with putting food on their table and getting started in a new life. So I don't have a problem with adopting a CWA, but I do have a couple of questions. I'm sorry, but like Ms. McGrady, I just got this yesterday. So I always like to do my due diligence in taking a look at contracts. I skimmed through it. And what I saw for the most part, I didn't have a problem with. The only thing that I do have a concern is the threshold of $250,000. I think a PLA or a CWA allows organizations to help with major construction projects, and I think it helps build better communities. But having said that, we have so many small business owners, and in this valley, a lot of them are longtime, lifetime friends. And I just don't want to see that they are excluded from getting jobs as well. So having said that, that's my biggest concern is the limit of 250,000. I'd like to see it raised. I like maybe in the future to get maybe just a draft that we could take a look at a week or so before. Because I do take my job seriously. I do want to look at the contract. I want to ask questions. I want to talk to people. I thank you all for coming today and talking to us and explaining it to us. And like I said, I hope you understand that I take your concerns very seriously. Thank you.
Mr. Sanchez.
Well, I'm just gonna pretty much, I don't have anything written, but I'll talk from my heart. As an apprentice, and I could speak on behalf of all apprentices, driving down below was a hassle. There was times where I was going to work and I had no idea how I was gonna get back home because I had no gas money. How many of us has been through that? So I'm not alone. So this alone right here, you know what? I'm gonna say this right now that I'm on this and things need to change. We need more work. We have the space up here to build more buildings, more structures out here. So you know what? I'm on your side. That's all I gotta say. Thank you.
Ms. Corona.
First, thank you all so much for being here. I completely honor and acknowledge the time that you took out of your very busy day. As many of you have said, have come directly from work. So thank you so much. That shows the importance of this community workforce agreement. And I will say, so I work 2 jobs and I was able to read the contract. So I would like you to hear both sides of the story. So when I was reading it, of course, I feel like, why hasn't this been done before? As you all know, I'm a newly elected member of this board, but it just felt like, well, of course, this makes sense. I also want to mention what I hear and what I'm seeing and read is the importance of keeping the local talent local. And I feel that, and as an educator and a teacher in a college, I know that there are many students that are not going to college, and that's 100% okay. In my previous life, I used to do career workforce development. So I was working with a lot of young men and women that wanted mortgage paying jobs. So I do 100% feel like the pages that were given to me were a really important read for me. And of course, I hear my colleague, Mrs. Nguyen and Ms. McGrady with just questions and concerns, but I'm willing to talk about them here. That's why we're here. So let's answer questions as we need. Let's discuss. It's one of 3 items on this agenda. So if we need clarity, I think we should get it so that we can make a vote on this. The other thing I did want to mention, opportunities. So I believe in opportunities for our Antelope Valley residents, and giving this opportunity to our students, which majority are coming from marginalized communities, they need to have that opportunity. So I think that's what I want to discuss, and I may have some questions as we continue, but again, I just want to say thank you so much for your time coming out and speaking to us. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McGrady, I want to go back to you. Do you have any questions? I have Mr. Nehan and Chris here, and they negotiated this. And I have an outstanding superintendent that did a great job, I believe, protecting this district and making sure that we're taken care of. And Mr. Hanna over here, he did a great job protecting these guys. So if I really want to give you guys, I know you guys didn't read it. So if you have any questions, I have 2 individuals here, ask away. We got all night. I'm here till midnight if we have to get, this is that important.
I appreciate that. Thank you so very much. Sorry about that. I appreciate the opportunity. And I'm not trying to whine about what all's going on in my life, but there you go.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
didn't have time to read this document, and I apologize for that. It wasn't because I
I
don't
guarantee
think
you,
it's
Mr.
important.
Nehan did an outstanding job,
But-
because I know he did.
I trust him. I
Good.
absolutely trust him. And I talked to him today, and I believe him. So anyway, I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Nguyen, do you have any questions? I have the 2 architects of
I
this community
always-
workforce agreement here for your questions.
I always have questions.
Bang away.
What is a prime specialty project?
So the question that you asked prior in your comments, and then also the prime. So your prime contractor is your general contractor. And whether you hire a general contractor to do a job or you let the job out multiple prime, those are 2 common ways that work is bid in school districts. So when you have a general contractor or you have a multi-prime contract, the threshold to trigger this agreement is $250,000 or greater. Give you an example, the city of Lancaster is triggered on $175,000.
The city of Palmdale is triggered on $250,000. LA Unified is triggered on $175,000. The threshold at that level is going to cover a lot of work. And that's the idea, to get these union members and residents of the community as many opportunities to work in their community as possible. As far as a small contractor, most of our members work for small contractors, small businesses, any business, whether they're union or non-union or open shop, as long as they submit a responsive bid and they have a contractor's license and they can meet your other pre-qualifications, can work under this agreement. Their key employees can work under this agreement. In the section, I believe it's section 3, the core worker language, they can have up to 5 of those workers on the project. They alternate 1-for-1 with union hall hires. These are all prevailing wage jobs. You're required to hire apprentices on prevailing wage jobs. So that same small business would have to hire an apprentice on this type of project anyway. That apprentice hire can count towards their hire from the union hall for this agreement. So that small business, they can work on these projects. If you're working in the Antelope Valley and you're doing public works construction, chances are you've worked under one of these agreements, because almost every single public agency here, from the transit authority to both cities, the water district, they all have agreements like this to maximize the opportunities for local residents.
Thank you. I did look up several different PLAs in Southern California and got a chance to just kind of skim through them. But I do want to clarify just one little thing. All of the jobs that my husband and I found for the fired air traffic controllers, PATCO, were all union jobs. And thank you to the organizations and the unions and the locals that helped us find jobs for every single one of those.
Our unions that are signatory to this community workforce agreement, they all have big hearts also, and they also have the best training in the world. So I'm happy that you were able to find opportunities within our unions for those displaced workers.
It was a lot of longshoreman jobs that we were able to get for a lot of the guys in the meantime, and a lot of these air traffic controllers that came out of high school or they came out of the service. And that's the only job that they had in their only training. And if I get on my soapbox, you won't want to hear everything I have to say, but they were lost once they got fired. They didn't know what to do. So we kept office open in Palmdale. Coffee was always on the counter, and the men and women would come in, our brothers and sisters would come in and look and see what kind of jobs Dwayne and I had found for them and which ones they could do. So I can't thank the unions that stepped up enough to help these families put food on their tables.
Yeah, so this should be an easy vote for you.
Well, I know the contract isn't a hard vote for me. It's not a hard vote for me. I would have liked to have had a little bit more chance to take a look at it. And I just was concerned a little bit about the $250,000 cap.
So we, in the greater Antelope Valley, we're using that number, or in some cases, even lower thresholds to trigger work, just to create more opportunities. This is a tight-knit community here, and we want to do everything we can to keep our members and potential new members from the community working as close to home and working on projects they can be proud of. That's why we're trying to generate more opportunities.
Thank you very much.
I have
Ms. Cron, go ahead.
I have just a couple of things. So the 250,000, can you just talk us through the process of how you got to that number? And just so that maybe we're a little clear on why 250?
'Cause Greg was strong arming it. I'm just letting you know.
But tell us how you got there, though.
It was, so this agreement was drafted off of other agreements that have been very successful. We tailored the local hire to meet the community that you serve here. But 250,000 on a general or multi-prime contract is going to capture as much work under this agreement to maximize the opportunities. If it's below 250,000, you most certainly can add it, but it will take a vote of the board to do that. So if you have a project that's 190,000 and you want it under the community workforce agreement, at any time and at the sole discretion of the board, you can do that. But 250,000, remember, when we bring a graduate from your district into our apprenticeship program, they're by and large going to go into apprenticeship programs that take 4 to 5 years to complete. So we want to have as many work opportunities to help get them through that apprenticeship so they could be journey level members. And 250,000 creates the most opportunities. 175 is better, but with having to.
You can still bid on those.
Yes.
Exactly.
And the board, the majority can say, let's do that. So that's a great thing as well.
Yeah, so but that was the reason why we tried to keep a synergy around the valley too. So the city of Palmdale, city of Lancaster, Antelope Valley Transit Authority, Palmdale Water District, Palmdale Recycled Water Authority. These were all common thresholds, and the contracting community has been successful. We've been able to take many more residents of the Antelope Valley into our apprenticeship programs. And, Palmdale School District, they don't even have a threshold. They just put everything under the agreement because it's been so successful. They vote to package bundle projects together. So if they're going to paint a school and they're going to paint one down the street and they're going to paint one down the street, they try to bundle those together. So they're capturing them all under the community workforce agreement. So this has been really a highlight of my career to be able to see how many opportunities that have been created in the Antelope Valley. And just, we don't get turnouts to meetings like this everywhere. It's because, so many good things have been created by just being thoughtful about how we structure these things. And, I can't predict how the vote's going to go tonight, but if you're all, willing to support this, I guarantee you 5 years from now, we're going to be probably extending it for 10 years because it's going to exceed your expectations.
Absolutely.
And if a company says that they don't want to bid or they don't want to comply with the community workforce agreement and they want to bring in a workforce from Bakersfield or from San Diego, that's probably the wrong contractor to be working on your project. We want someone that's going to maximize the best jobs for residents of the district and for the greater Antelope Valley.
And I know this is, new, but I would like us to even just think about it if you're not able to answer it. But can you give an example of how this workforce agreement will assist or foster working together with our district CTE folks? That's the first part. And then the second is, how do you see the role here of really trying to give women in these areas opportunities in the spirit of us being an educational place?
Yeah, so the program that your superintendent was talking about, our MC3 apprenticeship readiness program, it introduces you to every trade involved in a construction project. And it's a way to introduce you to every trade that there's no commitment to, for the next 4 years to go to apprenticeship school. There's no commitment to do this for the rest of your life. We would like somebody that's interested in the trades to take the course. And when you get introduced to every trade, you get confident on your applied mathematics. You get a little bit of labor history, so you know the value of going to the very best apprenticeship school and joining a union that you could be proud of. we've been successful over the last 5 years in placing over 1,240 of those graduates into 35 different local unions. Our female participation is 8 times higher than our general participation rates within our local unions. And this is a program that could be for adult students. We could bring, juniors and seniors over to take the same course, obviously separated, not at the same time as the adults. And we have a nonprofit at our Building Trades Council that has 2 placement coordinators, a case manager, and 2 other employees that are out trying to get grants to help you with funding in case you need any supplemental funding, helping these graduates find opportunities within all of our trades. Every one of the unions here tonight has placed graduates, and they're going to place many more graduates into their apprenticeship programs. And we'll have somebody work with your students that graduate to navigate either finding a sponsor or navigate apprenticeship applications. And it's just been a program that's really exceeded our expectations.
So, Mr. Nehan mentioned that it's going to start at RX Paris High School, correct? Do you envision it growing into other schools? Because I know RX is one of the smaller schools, and those students there already have that inkling to be in these areas, but I'm just curious, since, we have thousands of other students elsewhere, to give them opportunities to know what the trades are. So do you envision it moving, and this can go to either of you, do you envision it growing from one school to many?
Yeah, absolutely. And the number would be determined based on student need and whether it's inside the school day, outside the school day. We have a number of options, but it's really based on student need and what's the student interest.
And to piggyback on that, we found that high school students and all students have all different wants and desires. But most certainly we can take students from any of your schools and then bring them over to a central location at a time that works, maybe 5th and 6th period, maybe 1st and 2nd, maybe in the, after they graduate, whatever works best for your district. We can facilitate that. Not every student is going to want to go into one of the careers that I'm proud of. They have all different wants, but we know from experience, there's a lot of students within your district would love an opportunity to have a career that they can get training, and most of the time with college credit, with no cost out of their pocket. And then after 4 or 5 years, be earning a middle-class wage with health insurance. They probably don't think about health insurance as much at that age and a retirement, but they'll have it for when they get older. But they're going to have a wage that, they're not going to be, restricted, and they're not going to have debt, and they're going to have some college credit if they want to pursue that in the future. But there's a lot of your students that would love a chance to be a part of one of these unions. And hey, maybe be a future leader in one of the unions or own their own business someday. And that stuff happens all the time.
I'm sorry, one more question.
Sounds like you're very prepared. Go ahead.
So, Mr. Nehan, who is at the district level will be the liaison support to ensure success with this agreement?
With the agreement, primarily it'll come out of business services. So that would be Mr. Hawkins. And most of these require you to include in the bid, you include a project manager. I don't know the exact term, Chris.
Yeah, so the district,
Right.
you give us a point of contact for the district. We're happy to work with Mr. Hawkins. We have pre-job meetings so that the contractors make all the assignments before the meeting. You include the document in your bid document so everyone knows what they're getting it signed up for. They sign a letter of assent to be bound by it. Some districts and check the local hire from within the district. They'll have a staff person do it. Others might hire a consultant to help them with that. The contractor is responsible for the pre-job. So all those work assignments and everything like that, that's not extra work on your district. That happens with the contractor. And our unions, they do it different ways. The largest program in the country, they do it with in-house employees. And You know, a lot of people use consultants and, you know, to give you an example of workload, LA Unified does over $1 billion every year, and they have about 5 people working on it. So if you scale back that volume, you know, maybe you might have somebody working on it part-time, maybe you have one person working on it, maybe you hire a consultant for it, but it happens all different ways. And there's real efficient ways to get it done.
And then on the educational services side, would that fall under the CTE?
It would fall
I-
under Ed Services, and primarily Dr. Grado would take the lead and determine who's the point person for moving forward with that. And it would be, working with the trades would be relatively new to us, so it'd be a development process.
Right. Okay, I ask this because I just want to ensure that we are supporting our unions and the work before we, you know, get in over our heads. So I want to say, depending on the vote of the board, if it goes in the majority of the yes, then we need to make sure we have 100% support from you. That's
I
it.
believe you do.
Thank you.
And you have the support of our apprenticeship programs, you have the support of our nonprofit. We can help with some supplemental funding. We can help with all of our apprenticeship programs or open arms and welcome your students and staff to come visit and see what we're all about. So it's not just your district's responsibility, it's also our responsibility. And we're happy to work with you, and we're happy to get the word about it. You could hear by the speakers, everyone's really proud of their trade, and they're proud of their local unions. And we're more than happy to talk about it. Sometimes you got to cut us off because we talk too much about it, but we're more than happy to be a good partner to the district.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay, well, I'll go. What's great about us is, as you heard from Ms. Nguyen, she's a proud union member. Ms. Corona here is a union executive. Mr. Sanchez here is absolutely a union man. I know you were retired from a job that was represented by a union. I'm not sure about all your union
Absolutely.
affiliation.
I was a member of that union my entire teaching career.
Outstanding. And I've been a union member my whole career, both being a member, I've been a president, I've been a statewide elected official in the union, or a statewide representation, I should say. And I'm proud, and this is going to be, I think, one of the greatest things that we do as this board. It's a long time coming. We are one of the last entities in this valley to get on board. You can have a great debate on why that is, but I can tell you that you have 3 new members of this board, all strong union. This is what I love. I see my brothers and sisters out here. I still have to act as a representative of the district, so I have to take hats off. And I just want to say, Greg, Mr. Neon, thank you very much for you advocating for the district the way you did. Trust me, Mr. Hanna would have got down to like 50,000 instead of 250 if he could, correct?
Absolutely. We'd have no threshold.
Absolutely. So I just want to give both of you, thank you very much for your hard work. I'm sure it was a great negotiation. I was back there going, all right, let's get this done, I read it, and I think it's a great thing. I campaigned on this. Actually, we all campaigned on this. This is about our community. This is about taking care of our brothers and sisters out there and making sure our people stay in this community, work in this community, keep that money in this community. And I want my community, my constituents, that's what's sitting out here, our constituents are sitting right out here building our stuff, because I know they're professional, they're outstanding, they got many, many years of service doing their job. So I'm really excited about this vote. I think I know how it's going to go, but we will see. And I'm going to go ahead and get to the vote unless there's any other questions. All right, I'm going to throw it to you, Ms. McGrady. How do you vote?
Yes.
All right, Ms. Nguyen, how do you vote?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Sanchez.
Yes.
All right, you put the threshold over. I think it's going to go even better. Ms. Corona
Yes.
And it's a yes for me, 5-0. Congratulations. Well, I'm gonna take a little bit of presidential privilege. I only get this for a few more months and I gotta kick it over to someone else. Can I get a picture or can we all get a picture? The board and the members, can you all come up here? I'd like to get a picture. And here comes our lady right here. Can I invite the board down? You want it? Here, yeah, let's go here. Move our chairs, you're right.
And people could, are they allowed to come up? Oh, maybe not.
No. Mr. Grady, if you want to come down, we'll kind of get in the center.
guys just came from work.
Hey, brother.
Stand on the tippy toes.
Yeah. Let's bring work to our backyards, right? Bring it to our backyard.
Only welder in the gymnasium.
Yes.
People
Oh, really?
Awesome. That classroom slide, I kept walking through the gymnasium.
Sure, you want to go get in front? Let's go get in front.
You want to get in front?
Yeah.
Let's ask Rosita. Rosita,
Rosita, do
Is
you
it-
want us to come out in front? Okay. all
you
right.
can't see it.
Oh,
Okay.
come on. All right.
When you see me coming by you, let's just smile first. His name is King Moore, the second. He's part of the IBC 11. A lot of these very active.
All right.
already proved that. That was like 4 or 5 years ago.
I got your volume control back there. If you go too far away, we can't ever hear you. You think you're hearing.
I didn't know you had double light.
Hawkins, you're up. Go ahead, sir. Thank you very much. And we can't wait to get trained.
Very good. Thank you guys very much. It's nice to see you this afternoon. I'm going to try to drill down a little bit on school district budgeting basics to try to give a little bit of information and hopefully identify several key areas and provide some information. Now, intentionally, I have 18 pages of speaker notes. I did not put them on slides because otherwise you'd be reading slides and not listening. And so that's why I just have a brief outline that we're going to look at here. So the topics we're going to go over are just a brief overview of school budgeting, budget doctrines, where we start in building an annual budget, defining unrestricted funds, restricted funds, special education, looking at quickly interim reports, because you've seen 2 of those so far since the 3 of you have been elected, what economic reserves are, looking at budget oversight, who else looks at our budget besides you, challenges and some priorities. California School District budget, it's a complex document that outlines the district's financial plan for the upcoming year. The budget's developed by using all of the available information and resources and is then approved by the governing board. The budget includes information on the district's anticipated revenue and expenses. The budget serves as an operational plan stated in financial terms for carrying out the goals of the school district. A budget is a lot more than just numbers. It's a record of the district's past decisions and spending plans for the future. It shows a district's priorities by virtue of what and where spending occurs. It is a communications document that can tell the public a lot about our district goals. To capture the budget in and of itself, it's about 27,000 lines of account code, and each account code is 24 to 27 digits long for all of our expenditures. I kind of wanted to start out on budget doctrines. These are some of a couple, 3 of the absolutes that when we build a budget or when we are asked for expenditures, because truly the budget and the LCAP are now are far more of a compliance document today than they ever were in the past. And so when business services is requested an expenditure, we have a couple of primary doctrines that we have to use. First one is what's called supplanting versus supplemental. Supplanting occurs when a district reduces the spending of local funds or are unrestricted. I'll get to more definition later, and replaces that with a restricted fund. So for example, Title I funds, I can't use them to pay the power bill. But you can argue if we didn't have electricity at the school site, we couldn't have school. So therefore, you could say Title I, we could spend that on. That is supplanting, and we cannot do that. And that's a federal program or federal laws for that. So supplementing occurs when funds are used to enhance existing state or local funds for program activities intended to supplement the core educational program, raise student achievement, and close the learning gap. Title I and LCAP funds, they share several common goals. They're intended to support English learners, low income, and foster youth, and other identified subgroups. The idea is to improve or increase services. So when we're looking at using Title I dollars, LCAP dollars, the goal is to improve or increase services. So, for example, if we were to hire a counselor, if we have 6 and we hire a 7th counselor, that has improved the service because now we have 7 counselors. That's the idea of supplementing an existing expenditure. It covers also for staff positions, as I mentioned, for supplemental materials, assistance for students, training for staff and, for teachers and classified staff, training for that with activities designed to assist the students in achieving proficiency. The LCAP funds can be no more restrictive than Title I funds, and types of expenditures there include the purchase of supplemental materials, technology, that would be Chromebooks, that would be Promethean boards in the classroom, things like that is where we use our Title I and our LCAP dollars. The use of the LCAP funds at a school site are incorporated into what's called the school site's single plan for student achievement. That's the SPSA. All school sites have those. And we have a couple of budget doctrines. The second budget doctrine is what we call gift of taxpayer funds. California's constitution specifically prohibits the gifts of public funds and this applies to all public agencies, because all the funds we receive, with the exception of a very small amount for donations, are all from tax dollars. So the taxpayer is expecting us to spend the money they give us for high school students, 9-12 grades, to be spent on those high school students or in this district. So things we can't do, just some examples. We can't buy gifts that convey compassion, sympathy, or joy. I would love to get my secretary flowers for her birthday. I personally can buy it. I can't use district funds for it. We can't make donations to other charitable organizations. We're taking our tax dollars for our students. We can't go write a check to for $1,000 or any dollar amount to another 501c3 or another charity organization. We can't give away district property, items that would go home. I can't go make jackets with the district logo and board member on and give them to you. The taxpayers didn't pay us to provide jackets for board members. So these are items that we can't use our money for. Basically, any expenditure that does not have a directly and tangible benefit towards the education of students or connection to the education of the students. If it doesn't do that, then we probably can't spend it. Now, some program funds do allow us to buy some clothing, but Title I does not. Title I, there's you can buy your own, or we can get some donations to buy them for you if you would like. But there are, so like programs, we can't give away t-shirts. We can't give away some clothing, but we can go buy aprons for a culinary class, or we can buy a welding hat for the welding mask that goes over it. So we can buy some things, but we can't buy other things. What we can't do is take our general fund or any of our funds that are designated for the 9-12 high school district. Because we also have an umbrella. We have an adult school over here, and we have AAV charter school over here. We get funded for the high school. I can't transfer money to the adult ed because the adult ed has its own funding. I can't transfer money to the charter school because it has its own LCAP, it has its own Title I, it has its own function. The funding we receive for the high school district has to stay into the 9-12 for 9-12 students. There are a few exceptions. So things would be like on Monday night when you were here for the presentation for service awards, things like that. Those are of nominal value, not your disseminus, I can't pronounce it. And little gifts of pens for employees for recognition of how many years they've worked, or plaques. Those are all considered nominal value. We can attend organizations like breakfast and buy a ticket for breakfast. We just can't donate to that charitable organization because we're being seen then as we're representing the school district. And if it's like the business consortium, I can't remember their name locally, we can buy a ticket and go to their breakfast because we're representing our district and mingling with others, but we can't give them $1,000 donation. So you can kind of, there's gray areas, but it's kind of black and white once we really look at it. I'd like to shift gears to a little bit more of the budget process now. So you've seen this slide in the past. This is the slide, and we'll start at the top right-hand corner under a adopted budget, which will be in June. We'll bring you the adopted or the budget for next fiscal year in June. Was it the 8th or 9th and then the 12th for approval. Okay. Very good. On the 9th. And because I hadn't heard that yet, but I do have that question in. Okay, so we'll bring the budget to you on the 9th. You'll approve it on the 12th. Then we move into and understand this budget is based on the governor's initial budget he produced in January, and then a May revise, which will come out tomorrow. And we've got 2 weeks to cram it all together and get it in there. On the 19th, school services will have a presentation on the and if you want to join, if you want to be on it, we'll pay for. I mean, it's like $250. So I'd appreciate if you're going to be on it that you really be on it. Yes. So and it could be 2 or 3 of you in a room. Obviously, they're not watching the camera coming back. Yes, absolutely. So when we build our budget, the number one thing that we start with is the number of students. In California, school districts have little control over most of the revenue that we receive. Instead, its income is affected by state determined formulas, meaning the state has a formula they're going to fund schools by. And then some of the mandatory programs that we have to be involved in. So the number of students who attend a school is critical to our revenues because most of its funding is provided on a per pupil basis, adjusted for actual average daily attendance. You've heard that term before, ADA. That's your average daily attendance. And that's how we get our budget process started. So now what we do is we know how many seniors we have, so we take those off. We then get information from our feeder schools as to all the 8th graders. We geocode them and put them into the attendance area of all of our high schools. Then we have a very long, it's got to be at least 15 to 20 year history of movement. And it's all in a pretty complicated Excel spreadsheet, but we'll go through that and COVID kind of messed us up. So we're using 3 and 5 year projections right now because of COVID. But we use our historical trend data, very extensive set of that. And we're about 95% correct that if we think we're going to have 860 freshmen going to night next year, we're probably about 95% correct because of the historical trends using that as a future trend analysis. So once we determine how many students we're going to have go, then we have to get down to what is actually we get paid on, and that's your ADA. So the ADA is a calculation that tracks the daily attendance of each student through, and this is where it gets silly, but through day 133 of school, 133rd day, which ends up generally around the end of March. That's called P2, and the P2 is what schools live and die by. For that tells us what our revenue is going to be. We'll have some slight adjustments going into the end of the year, but generally not too significant. So during COVID, we saw our numbers drop from enrollment to ADA down to about 87%. That means only 87% of the students were showing up regularly to our school. This year, current year, we've rebounded to about 90%. We used to hold just a hair short of 93, which is really very, very good for a high school. a K-6 elementary because those kids run to go see Mrs. Smith, their teacher, and their parents drop them off and they stay at school. When they get to high school, unfortunately, they're not running to school to see Mrs. Smith, nor when the parents drop them off, as soon as the parents are out of the parking lot, some of them go the other direction. So but 93% for a high school district is quite excellent for an attendance. Like I said, this year we're at 90%. So if we look at what's kind of happening here in the state also, we have declining enrollment. This year we're flat to up a little bit over last year, which is excellent. But we have been dropping the last 4 years. So the state as a whole is expecting a loss of about 40,000 students this year. So that's statewide. We're a little different. The economy here is a little better, meaning we have cheaper housing. And so hopefully we can hold some of that, but the state is losing students. So fewer students and lower attendance rates means less funding for us as we move forward. So as an example, 1% drop. If we go from 93 to 92%, it's $3.5 million in revenue. So right now we're 3% below where we were historically. We're talking about $10 million less revenue. So for each percentage point we go back up, that puts more money in our unrestricted reserves or fund, basically. Not on this year. They talked about it a lot last year, looking at more of an enrollment formula, but it hasn't gained any traction in the legislature that I've read so far for this year's budget.
I just read that Mike Garcia was bringing forward a bill to Washington for the country that to do away with ADA, that it's like whatever your not attendance, but whatever your enrollment is, that's what it would be
Yes.
based on, just because so many schools are in such terrible streets because
Our absentee rate, so if you figure that we're at 90%, we got 21,000 enrolled, that's 2,100 kids not in school on any given day. So that now gets significant. You're absolutely right. At the federal level, they would affect our title programs.
Oh, it would, okay. I thought it would just go across. They were talking about three or four states are doing it already, and they were going to try to do it countrywide, and that it would no longer be based on attendance.
What I saw was primarily federal programs.
Okay.
It's a little hard for the Fed to come in and tell the states what they have to and not have to do. Texas and Florida being prime examples in politics. But anyways, so we look at, the decline of students in the state. Bottom line is there's fewer school-age children today than there was 10 years ago, 20 and 30 years ago. People are having children less and they're waiting longer to have them. So there's fewer people. And we've seen a significant decline in the state birth rate since about 2010. We have fewer people coming into the state. The state's projecting a total of 11% drop by 2029. So 6 years away, the state's looking at having an 11% fewer kids overall. The decline in enrollment and high absenteeism rates has a destabilizing effect on our budget and impacts all areas of our ability to provide a quality education for all students. And I'd like to switch and move now to revenue sources. The governor provides his initial budget, as we mentioned, in January, then comes out and readjusts it in May. We get an initial look at our projected revenue for the general fund, better known as the cost of living or a COLA increase. Additionally, the governor's office will come out and they'll tell us about either specific programs that they want to expand or brand new ones and how they're going to fund some of these things. The district receives its funding in two main categories. They are unrestricted and restricted. So if we start and we look at what is unrestricted dollars, they can be used for the general education purposes. These are funds designed to provide for the basic educational needs of a school district. All school districts in the state get the same basic grant. So we get the per pupil student amount. And they are to pay the majority of the staff salaries, benefits, other items, and services required to keep the school in operation. custodial, maintenance, grounds, administration, equipment, utilities, supplies, you name it, that's what the base grant is designed to do. Restricted dollars are so-called, what we call categorical. That would be federal dollars that is, but typically categorical dollars have a much narrow focus. Like Title I has its program and it has a narrow focus. Home to school transportation, a narrow focus for bus drivers and buses, obviously. Classroom materials, textbooks, professional development, child nutrition, each one of those we receive funding in, but it is more of a narrow focus than the unrestricted fund. All of these programs that we have in categorical programs are designed to improve outcomes for at-risk students, disadvantaged and English learners. Federal monies come through the title program, and we have to spend it down to at least 15% every year. 15% is the maximum we can carry over. There is every third year you can get an exception. We also pay for a lot of professional training for our staff using the federal money because they designate it in Title I. Well, it's actually Title IV is designated for staff training. Our LCAP is restricted to the spending plan approved by the school board and ultimately by LACO, who approves it as well. The restricted one-time funding we get, like the COVID money, the ESSER, things like that, those are in specific funds as well. Each source of funds has directed spending requirements from the state or federal governments. As the programs have grown over time, they'll make changes. So Title I will change, but they're not going to make major changes, but they do. There's several programs that require that we spend our money on professional development, and they've actually carved pieces out so we do that. The state is, and that's because the state is honestly focusing on more teacher development, thinking that that will improve and bring up the students in the classes if the teachers are trained better.
And Brian, if I may, just to clarify, professional development includes conference and travel. So we see a number of conference and travel for teachers with different categorical or different funding sources. And that's what it was intended for.
They actually put in there, some funds are designed we've got kit funds, it's kitchen funds. A piece of that has to go to staff training. We have ESSER funds or state A to G requirement. That has a piece of it that says like 5% has to be spent on professional development. So the state's really trying to push teacher training and staff development as a whole. When we look at this, and this is another slide I've shown you before, we look at our funds, our funding in the LCFF. That's the local control funding formula that was put in place by Governor Brown back in about 2011, 2012. So we get our funding comes from several sources. First, we get funding from local property taxes. Second, then the state will backfill whatever the formula funding is for us. So for example, if we are supposed to get $10,000 per student, according to the LCFF formula, we get property taxes of 3,000, the state backfills 7, so we get the 10. Bottom line is it's all tax dollars, whether it's property taxes locally or state personal income tax or business tax going up front. State funds us, remember, on ADA. That is how they currently fund us, and our ADA is the driver for all of our funds when we build our budget. So looking at this one particular slide here, I call it an oil drum, but you see on the bottom is base grant, grade span adjustment, necessary small school does not affect us. So those two, grade span adjustment, we get a few extra dollars for the 9th graders that we have. That is our adjusted base grant, that $229,820,000 and what's designed for us to operate our school on. That's to pay virtually all of our bills for operations, maintenance, water, power, everything else. If you go up to then the next group there under concentration grant and supplemental grant, that's where we get our money that funds our LCAP. So if you hear about LCAP, supplemental concentration, or targeted, they kind of all made the same. I mean, it's the same grouping. LCAP is the local area or local control accountability plan. That's the plan on how we're going to spend the money. Supplemental concentration is what determines how much money. And then targeted refers to the targeted students that we need to spend the money on, which is derived. The supplemental and concentration grant is derived by what's called our unduplicated student count. So if you look on the left-hand side, you see where it has unduplicated pupil count. It's for English learners, low income, and foster youth. It's only going to, I could be an English learner and I could be a low income. I make two categories. We're only going to count you once. The state's not going to let us count you twice.
Mr. Hawkins, just quickly, what, for low income, is that based on the median rate of poverty? What's low income defined as?
It is based on what used to be the free and reduced lunch. So there is a whole graph sheet that says if you have 4 people in your family, if you make less than $32,000, you qualify for this. And I just made the number up, but there's a whole sheet. But it's based on free and reduced lunch that we used to do that we don't really have to now because all lunch is free. And that makes it difficult in high schools to count those students. We used to be running, we probably have close to 80% would fall into that unduplicated count. We're barely getting about 67%. And that's because the high school students, they may decide, they don't eat lunch. There's a good third of the high school student population that will not go through our lunch line. So whether they are an English learner, low income, or a foster youth, they won't fill out or they won't take home and have their parents fill out the form. So we know we have the elementary feeders. Palmdale probably has almost 90%. We're still only getting about 67% district-wide, and we do a lot of work trying to get the parents to at least answer about 4 basic questions. And we pay overtime for staff to work in the evenings to call families just to see if we can get that, because that is the primary driver to your LCAP plan, your funding through the concentration supplemental grant. So if that goes up 5%, you could see a 5% increase on your 50 million. So another 2.5 in your LCAP. But we've got to get the parents to give us the information, and it's hard enough because a lot of the students won't eat lunch and they don't care, and their parents don't care because their kid's not going to eat lunch. So it's kind of a vicious circle there. Absolutely, you may.
Before we move on to LCAP.
I have a quick question. So our homeless students, do they fall under the low income bracket?
They could, but there is a whole set of other homeless grants and programs that we have that we work on identifying them.
Oh, okay.
So they have their own funding source for that. They've thrown that in there a little bit, but it's a lot harder to even get them to fill out our forms.
Oh, I can imagine.
For that.
Thank you.
Right, Mr. Grado, you are up, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right, at this time, I'd like to welcome up to the podium, Dr. Will Laird, our Director of School Improvement, to discuss the LCAP.
Mr. Hughes,
Yes.
can I just ask one more quick question?
Absolutely.
So Mr. Hawkins, where'd he go? So how many different categories do you have?
About 80.
80 different categories?
Yep. We have, when you look at what our resources and categories, there's about 80, everything from lottery, Title I, which we know about, but you can drop into nutrition. We have Medi-Cal billing. We have State's Systematic Improvement Act, educator effectiveness money. So as we do this, my business department, Trixie's oversees that. We track about 80 different programs and have to keep accounting for that and have to report that out on a quarterly basis to different state and federal agencies.
Oh, my. Oh,
So.
thank you.
We are tracking all of that. And the one thing to make a note is it's all compliance. So each one of those 80 have different rules and regulations on where and what you can spend it on.
Wow.
So
Thank you.
we are the gatekeepers also to keep us in compliance.
Trixie and your staff. So thank you very much. Right, Mr. Grado, you are up, sir.
All right, thank you. Just wanted to call up Dr. Will Laird, our Director One of School Improvement, to discuss this year's LCAP.
Outstanding.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board and cabinet. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to come up here and talk a little bit about the LCAP process. Just kind of by way of caveat, I'm not going to be getting into the kind of the details of the LCAP itself. We're going to get to do that in June when we present the LCAP to you guys. So tonight really is more about just kind of explaining the process of the kind of the annual process of what we go through to develop it each year. Okay.
Perfect.
So just by quick way of review, as you know, that the state of California requires that we produce an LCAP to address how we're using the LCFF funds, specifically to meet the needs of our students. This is a 3-year plan. We are in year 3 of that 3-year plan. We've already heard that next year there's going to be a new template. And so next year's LCAP might look very different after the 23-24. But again, the idea is for the plan to address how we're using those expenditures, how we're using that funding to meet the students' needs, and also to address the 8 state priorities, the focuses of the state. So I'm going to get into that in a little bit in just a second as well. And then beyond that, it's really an opportunity for us to kind of tell our story. What are we doing as a district to meet the needs of our students? How are we doing that? How are we using the funding? And so it really does give us an opportunity to kind of talk through what we're doing to address the needs of those targeted students that Mr. Hawkins was talking about, our English learner students, our foster youth, and our low income. Now, the plan itself is really focused on all students, but it's through the lens of those targeted students. So it's not just for those kids. It really is for all students, but we have to kind of do it through the lens of those unduplicated. So when we talk about the 8 state priorities, this is just a quick graphic to kind of display what those 8 state priorities are. The 2 red boxes on either side, that's kind of the ones that focus on the quantitative, like actual student outcomes and student achievement. And so that would be represented by the California dashboard. So when we look at how our students perform on our academic testing, our English and our math, what our grad rate is, how well we're progressing in reclassifying our EL students, our college career indicator. So all the things that you would associate with the California dashboard, that would be located kind of in those 2 red boxes. So then that leaves basic services, implementation of state standards, course access, parent involvement, student engagement, and school climate. Those are what we call local indicators. And those are things that we collect data on locally within our district, primarily through survey data, through meetings that we have with school staff, with community members, talking to students, collecting information from them, getting feedback from them. So that those local indicators are just that. Those aren't things that you would typically see on like a state California dashboard. You wouldn't see quantitative data on that. So when we talk about our local indicators, this is a representation of that. We have, again, priority 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7 based on the 8 state priorities. Things like basic services and conditions, implementation of state standards, parent and family engagement, school climate, access to a broad course of study. Real quick on the basic services, what that's referring to primarily is our teachers, our curriculum or materials, and our facilities. So each year we have, under the Williams legislation, we get reviewed to make sure that we have enough textbooks for our students and that they have access to them. Williams also does a facilities in, I'm just lost the word, basically inspection. They come on our campuses and they make sure that our buildings, that our campuses are safe, they're clean, all that kind of stuff. And I'm proud to say that we pass those inspections every year. Whenever Williams comes, you know, we're always able to demonstrate that we've met the standard when it comes to facilities, materials. And then for the teachers, it has to do with whether or not our teachers have qualified under the highly qualified designation. And so again, it's either a yes, they did, or no, they didn't. And then as you look at the others, they're fairly self-explanatory. How are we doing in regards to parent-family engagement, How are we doing when it comes to safe and secure school climate? How are we doing when it comes to the types of classes that we offer and the access that students have to those? And again, most of that data is collected through local survey data and then physical inspection. Any questions so far? Nope. All right. So this is in essence what our LCAP goals are. So several years ago, when we established our very first LCAP, we began that process the same way we begin each annual process, and that is with basically calling in our educational partners, getting input and feedback from our parents, from our students, from our staff, and getting from them, what are the things that are important to you? What are the priorities that you want us to have when it comes to the kind of services and the kind of program that we're offering to our students? So several years ago, the goals that were established were the first 4 that you see there, and they focused on college and career readiness. They focused on providing a 21st century learning environment, as well as a rigorous curriculum for our students. It focused goal 3 on cultivating a safe, secure, positive school climate. And then goal 4 had to do with making sure that we were communicating effectively with our educational partners all around. And so those 4 goals have continued each year to be reinforced. And each year when we go through the process of getting educational partner feedback, that year after year has been continually the focus. And the educational partners that we talk to say, yes, those are great goals and we want to continue to do that. Now you will see a goal 5 there. That was brand new this year. So the state identified our district as a district with students with disabilities that were underperforming. And so we were required to put in an additional goal that specifically addressed the performance or the needs of our students with disabilities. However, this is not part of that targeted funding. So even though the targeted funding isn't tied to that goal, we still need to expressly state in our LCAP what we're doing to address those needs and to try to make sure that we're addressing those gaps in learning. So when you look at the LCAP, again, there are going to be those 5 goals, and then under each of those goals, there's going to be a certain number of specific actions, and we call those contributing actions. But there are different kinds of actions. Some of them are going to be very specific to our targeted students, and so we call those limited actions. So those are going to be actions that were designed and specifically intended to meet the needs of those EL, foster youth, and low-income students. But we also have school and district-wide actions that meet the needs of a larger segment of our student population. And we're able to do that under the LCFF funding as long as, down at the bottom, there's 2 stars. As long as the action that we're creating is being designed or intended to address the unique needs of those targeted students, then we can expand the scope of who benefits from that action. And then the last star there, the bottom point, the action also has to increase or improve services. So an example of this would be how, as a district, we pay for AP testing for our students. They only have to pay $5. They can take as many AP tests as they want, and it's only $5 per test, as opposed to the full amount. Now, that is a district-wide action that we take that isn't just about our EL, foster youth, or low-income students. So a lot of students get to benefit from that, but it's designed to remove some of the roadblocks that would keep those students from being able to take AP exams. Does that make sense? All right, and this is just a visual graphic showing kind of each of our goals along with some of the representative actions under each of those goals. So this is goal 1, college and career readiness, and you can see some of the actions that are represented under that. For example, the administration of the PSAT, ELA math supports, writing support, AP tutoring, and so on. So this just kind of gives you a quick reference guide to be able to look up each of those goals and see the kinds of things that we're doing under each one of those goals, if that makes sense. Yes, Ms. Wynn. Question. So the NWEA is our in-house assessment. So we have the state assessment, the CASP test. The NWEA is what we use in-house. We give it 3 times a year in math, English, and science. And we look at how our students doing at the very beginning of the year. So we test in the fall, we test in the winter, and then we test in the spring. And the beauty of the NWEA is that it doesn't just tell us how our students are performing, but it also measures growth over time. The other benefit of the NWEA is that it's aligned with the CASP. So when our students are tested in the fall, we get kind of a point in time performance data piece. And then when we test again in the winter, we can see how much those students grew over that semester, but we also can, it's somewhat predictive. We can see based on how they did in the NWA, we can kind of see where they're at in relation to how they could possibly do on the CASP in the spring. So it gives our teachers the opportunity to adjust their instruction as the year goes on, to make sure that the students that are maybe falling behind or struggling, that they can address those needs before they test in the spring. Yep. And then we have goal 2, 21st century learning. Again, you can see the examples of some of the actions that we're doing, some of the things that we're doing under goal 2. We support the AVID program, CTE, a lot of the CTE, some of the CTE programs fall under that. Classroom walkthroughs, professional development, dual enrollment AP exams, as I mentioned before. And then we have goal 3. This is again focused on, yeah, absolutely.
Environment, regular, multiple experience and opportunities for academic, collegiate, professional, personal growth. And I'm just curious, where's like your social, emotional well-being holistic approach? Is that embedded in all of these?
Not specifically in this goal, but you'll see that more in the next
Okay,
one.
thank you.
It's a great question. So under the cultivating safe, secure, positive school culture, that's where you'll see a lot of our SEL emphasis, a lot of our counseling services, and a lot of our guidance services are built underneath goal 3. So supplemental interventions and supports, that's where you would see some of the things that we're doing under MTSS, some of the things that we're doing under PBIS, and addressing those SEL needs. Yeah, absolutely. And then goal 4, communicate effectively. Again, this is just an example of some of the things that we're doing, some of the many things that we're doing to try to reach our educational partners. The one thing that I did want to point out in this, besides our information systems like PowerSchool and ParentLink, is the PK program. And so that is one of the highlights from this year. So the PK program was something that we had several years ago. And it was, so PK is the Parent Institute for Quality Education, and it started down in LA. And the idea was to specifically address the needs of parents of first or second generation children who were in the school system. And so there was usually like a language barrier. And then there also was just that lack of awareness of just the school system itself, how to apply for colleges. They just didn't have that institutional knowledge. And so the goal of the PK program was to basically build these parent workshops to really teach the parents and to train the parents to help them understand how they could best support their students at home, and then learn more about the institution of education, and they could get a better awareness of what they need to do to kind of help support their kids as they're moving towards being A through G or qualifying for a UC or CSU or things like that. This year we expand that quite a bit to basically be all of our schools but one held a PK institute during the year, parent workshops, and we had more parents go through that this year than we've ever had before. You had a question?
The other morning, with all of the parents, the graduation ceremony, so to speak, is that PK?
No, that was the Disciplina Positiva. Sorry, I'm probably.
Okay, and then that,
So that is a similar program, but it's a little bit more focused on our EL families.
yeah,
And it also is kind of a parent training, and that's done at the district level. PK is happening on each of the individual school sites. Whereas what you saw was a representation of a program that we're doing here at the district office, and we invite the parents in. And so that was the difference between those.
I was told that we have almost 200 parents that are involved in that.
Yeah, so there were
program
2
as well.
cohorts. There was one in the
That's
fall.
wonderful.
And there was one in the spring, and they actually kind of build on each other. So there were some parents that actually did both. But yeah, it was a very similar program, but a little bit more targeted.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then goal 5, as I mentioned, was the one that focuses on our students with disabilities. And again, this is primarily base funded. This isn't targeted funded. But again, we're going to have students with disabilities that also fall into that those categories of EL, foster youth, or low income. So there's going to be some cross purposes there. All right, so talking about just the development and the annual process that we go through every year, this just kind of gives you a broad overview. And then what I'm going to do is in the next few slides, kind of look at each one of these stages real quick. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me or just throw your hand up. So stage one kind of, again, starts with getting feedback from the community, getting information from our educational partners. Stage two is when we began to draft the plan and review the data from the year before to see what are the areas of need, what are the areas of growth, what are the things that we need to focus on for next year's plan. Then we get into stage three, which is revision and review. And then finally, we get to finalization and approval, which we will be at the first week of June when we're all together again. So again, I'm going to be going into a little bit more depth on each of these. So I'm not skipping information necessarily, but you'll see each of these a little bit more clearly, I think, as we look at each one. So in terms of consulting with the community, just what do we mean by that? And when you think about educational partners, again, it's parents, it's community members, it's staff, it's students, it's everybody that has anything to do with what's happening on our school campuses or in the building that we're in right now. And so we put a lot of effort into trying to engage the community in a lot of different ways. We used to have one back to school night. Now we have two. That's one of the small things that we've done. We have our regular committees that meet on a regular basis throughout the year. So we have our district parent advisory groups, our DLAC and our DPAC, which is the EL and then the parent advisory committee. We also meet regularly with our SELPA representative to make sure that we're in line with and addressing our special ed needs. And then we also are utilizing our survey data. So we have one major survey in the fall, and then we have one major survey in the spring, and I'll talk a little bit more about those later. But we get a lot of really good data from that, and those surveys go to parents, students, teachers, classified staff, and so forth.
Mr. or Dr. Laird?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have a quick question.
absolutely.
Under the community column,
Mhm.
do you, I know we just approved a parent advisory group this month or last
Yes.
month. So, and this is for June, but do you envision in the next cycle that parent advisory board will now be a part of this column?
Absolutely, it could. So
Your role. You're going to develop that.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So
So
absolutely.
I'll see you next year.
Yes, absolutely. So there is the district parent advisory committee, and that is a specific ed code designation. So there is an official again, district parent advisory committee that is part of that compliance piece for site plans and for district learning plans. But the district parent advisory committee that was brought up, I think a couple board meetings ago. I mean, obviously that's going to be an additional group of educational partners that we're going to want to hear and talk to and get their feedback from, without a doubt. So one of the highlights for this year in terms of gaining educational partner feedback was our LCAP Roadshow. And I do want to give credit to Dr. Jennifer Slater Sanchez, who's sitting right over there. So in the past, you know, we sent out surveys and we have committees that meet at the district office, and we invite parents and we invite community members to come. And this year we kind of flipped the script a little bit, and we were very intentional about going to every single school site. So you'll notice on the next couple of slides, you'll see that there were at least 2 meetings at every school site. One was focused on parents. And so that was after school hours. Parents were invited to come and hear about the LCAP, and then also give feedback and input as to what they would like to see in future LCAPs. And then there were also meetings held on a different day during the school day with students, so that students could also give their feedback as to how they thought we were doing when it came to implementing the LCAP, and then also any ideas that they had for changes that they might like to make.
For whenever you can you get the board the numbers of how many people attended each of these meetings?
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. So this just kind of shows graphically the dates starting in October. We went out to Little Rock High School, AV, Knight, Palmdale, Lancaster, and then continued that into the spring. And so by the end, Dr. Slater Sanchez had gone to every campus, like I said, multiple times, to interact with parents and with students and to try to get as much educational partner feedback as we possibly could. because that's really where the process starts, is getting that initial feedback. And then this also kind of shows the same thing, but also the number of times that we met with our established committees and established groups. So you can see the District English Learner Advisory Committee, the DLAC. We've presented to them 3 times already this year. We're going to be presenting to them again next week. And so all along the process, so initially it's getting that initial feedback. Then as we begin drafting and making revisions, we go back and say, hey, what do you think about this? And so they're really involved in that process throughout the school year. Same thing with the District Parent Advisory Committee. We've met 3 times with them. SELP administration twice already this year. And then our district site leadership team met 3 times this semester. And again, each one of those meetings was designed and geared towards going over the LCAP, looking at the goals, looking at the actions, making sure that we were addressing all the needs that we needed to meet based on the outcome data that we were getting from surveys, from the state data, and then coming up with ideas for what we could do to enhance and increase and improve those things. The draft plan and review. So again, what we're going to always start with is data. We want to make data informed decisions. So we're going to look at our quantitative state data first and foremost. We usually get that back early in the fall so we can see how our kids did on their math and their English scores. We can see where we're at when it comes to grad rate. We can see how we did on the college career indicator. We can see how we did in terms of making progress in terms of our EL reclassification. So we're going to take that data right off the bat, and we're going to see where are the gaps. Where are the areas that we were successful? Where are the areas that we still have some work to do? And then using that data, begin drafting a plan that's going to address those needs. We're looking at the dashboard, like I mentioned. And then we also are going to be looking at our local indicators and our survey data. For the qualitative, it's going to be a lot of meetings, a lot of opportunities to meet with the community and to try to get with as many of our educational partners as possible. We start coding it, right? We start looking at what are the themes that keep emerging? What are the things that we keep hearing come up multiple times? Those are the things that kind of stand out to us. So I wanted to give you a kind of a brief summary of some of the feedback that we've gotten this year. First and foremost, there was a support for, again, the goals that we have. That's been a continued theme year after year. And as you kind of go through and look at these, I won't read through every single one. I do want to say one thing though, as you look at the next couple slides, there isn't anything on here that we're not already doing. There was nothing that was like revolutionarily new, but there was definitely an expressed desire to see those things continue or to see us increase or improve some of the things that we're already doing. So, but there were some things that kind of stood out as being a little bit unique to some of the things that we've been experiencing the last year, right? So you can see the third one on the list, flexible transportation options for extracurricular activities, before and after school, tutoring, and credit retrieval. We know that transportation has been an issue this year, right? Costs went up. We were struggling to get enough bus drivers. And so that has kind of filtered down in terms of having an impact and people are feeling it. So that was definitely something that came up in a lot of the meetings that we had because they want to make sure that transportation doesn't become a hindrance or a roadblock to our students being able to have access to all the things that we want them to have access to. Support for college and career focused field trips. Again, just a couple of years ago, a lot of that stopped because of COVID. And there was a couple of years where we didn't really get to go anywhere and we didn't get to really take our kids off campus very much. And now that things are pretty much open up again, there's definitely an expressed desire to see those things increase and improve. And we are pretty much back out there again. But that was something that people missed. And so that's coming up in a lot of our meetings. The fourth one, professional development for teachers. As Mr. Hawkins already mentioned, PD is a really big thing right now, and there's a heavy emphasis on that. But specifically, there's been a lot of references made to hands-on project-based learning. Again, whether that's a direct tie to COVID and the fact that kids were more disconnected and disengaged, and now they don't want to just be back at school, but they want to be active, they want to be engaged. They don't want to just sit there and listen to somebody giving them information. But there's that desire for hands-on project-based learning. And I think you guys heard in our last board meeting, we did a presentation on the math literacy program. And that's one of the things that has really made a difference. And kids are really responding to that because it gives them a chance to really do math, but in a much more hands-on way. And we're seeing a lot of success with programs like that.
I think that's on our agenda for next meeting to approve that funding for that program.
slide, you can see the first 2 points are a heavy emphasis on counseling, college guidance, adulting. Again, those SEL needs that are there and really looking at the whole child, not just what's going on academically, but also what can we do to support students and to wrap around some of the other needs that they have, recognizing that some of the kids are struggling with some of those soft skills. Additional support in the form of tutoring, mental health support, increased opportunities for credit retrieval. So again, this is just a sample of some of the themes that have come up. And so what we do is we take that information, we go, okay, does this align with our current LCAP goals and actions? Are there actions that we need to increase or improve? Are there new actions that we need to include in order to make sure that we're really addressing some of the things that are being communicated to us?
I have a question. Did anything pop up? Because what triggered my question is the second arrow about adulting.
Yeah.
I wish I had this in high school, adulting.
I
But-
probably still need it.
I know, right? But is there anything in here or coming from the community about this idea of information literacy as far as what I'm finding is young people do not know how to distinguish truth versus not truth when it comes to social media and the digital age. So where does that fit in this?
Yeah. So
And if it doesn't, I wonder if we can try to figure it out. And I know I've talked to Mr. Nehan about it. I'm really passionate about this.
no, it's a great question. It is something that we've had conversations about, that ability to discern and filter information and just that skill of, when you hear something, read something, how do you verify it? How do you trust it? And that is a skill without a doubt. We have things like that built into some of our existing curriculums, but it's not like a standalone. To my recollection, and maybe Dr. Slater Sanchez can talk about that. I haven't heard that specifically brought up as a need.
You're gonna hear more, I'm sorry, if I may real quickly, you're gonna hear more and more about our graduate student profile. And we've been working on that, for a few years now, but one of the things in there is really just the critical thinking that our students are making sure that, as they leave our institution, that they're really strong in that area and that they're able to collaborate, but also just that they can discern information in a way that is beneficial and that they're understanding that so much of it can be, detrimental as well. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Come on up. Come on up. Absolutely.
Literacy was, and there's also, I believe it's now on the books by 26, 27 or 27, 28. Students who graduate must have a course still to be developed in financial literacy.
Yeah, that was in our latest legislative update.
Yeah.
We just pulled that rush.
Oh, yeah. I mean, financial literacy, gosh, I would be in such a different place if I had that in high school. But I do want us to not lose the sight of that digital information literacy knowledge coming from that. So again, something for you to
And I'm glad you
consider.
mentioned that, and I appreciate Dr. Grado mentioning the graduate student profile, which you are going to be hearing more about, because there are elements of the graduate student profile that I think are going to allow us to speak specifically to that.
Thank you.
This is just, I'm not going to read through all this for you guys, but this is just a kind of a summary of the results that we had this year that we got back from our fall climate survey and then our winter LCAP survey. So the basic difference between these two surveys is that the one on the left we give in the fall, and it's really kind of more of a general survey. How do you feel about being at school? Do you feel safe? Do you feel connected to a staff member? Just kind of the overall sense of feeling of safety. Then we have our LCAP survey in the winter, and those questions are geared a little more specifically to our actual LCAP goals. And so the questions are geared to get information or get feedback related to how well parents, staff, and students think that we're implementing the goals of the LCAP. And so the percentages that you see there represent the percent of satisfied or highly satisfied responses. So like if you look on the right, 85% of the respondents, and again, that includes staff, students, and parents, feel that that they are academically being prepared to be academically proficient 75% feel that they're being prepared for college or for secondary options. And so as you go down, you can kind of see where those percentages fall.
And how many people took this survey? Because I
Um,
think that would help me understand the
Yeah,
percentages.
I don't have the exact number on top of my head,
Okay.
but I know last year we had a little over 7,000. Most years we average between 10 and 12,000 total respondents. So it's a
And-
fairly large sample size.
And would you have an idea, or would you have the data of, let's say, Palmdale High School, what was their engagement with the survey? So
Yes.
with that other request I
Absolutely.
had, can you send that to us as well?
Yeah, we can break that down.
I'm just really curious per site, which families participated? Who do we need to maybe engage a little more?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
we can absolutely get that data. Revision and review, and this just kind of gives you a visual idea of the cycle. So we, in the fall, we're really hitting the implementation hard. And then we start right into the late fall with beginning to reflect on how we're doing. We started to get that initial feedback from our educational partner groups. And we start then drafting in February, March, and we start sharing that draft with those same groups, say, hey, here's what we're looking at doing. Here's what we're looking at creating based on the feedback we've gotten from you. What does this look like? And so again, we're going back to those groups multiple times to make sure that all along that process, the final document ends up representing and being true to the things that they've shared with us. And then we get into the spring where we begin refining those modifications, and then we get it ready for final approval. Final educational partner feedback check. So once we have our draft, we go back to each one of these groups to kind of have them take one last look to make sure we didn't miss anything, make sure that nothing slipped through the cracks. We've already met with the district site leadership team. We have met with the district parent advisory committee. We've met with the labor groups, AVTA and CSEA. We've had a meeting with our SUPA representative. As I mentioned, we're going to be meeting with the district English Learner Advisory Committee next week. And then we also are regularly meeting at least every couple of weeks with our LACO representatives. And they kind of really are partners with this, and they make sure that as we're writing the document, that we're addressing all the compliance pieces and that we're making sure that the narrative is consistent with the data and with the financial pieces. And then that leads to finalization and approval. As I mentioned, we're going to be back here in June, give you guys an opportunity to take a look at it. That's going to be our open public hearing where members of the public can speak to it. And then we'll have the board approval on June 12th. And then it goes to the county and the state. And I did want to mention one thing with this. When we send it to the county, there's always revisions. There's always going to be things that they send back to us and say, hey, could you fix this, this, and this, or this wasn't clear. We need some clarification on this. That's a very normal part of the process. Last year, there wasn't a single district in the county that didn't have the LCAP sent back. And so just want to kind of give you a heads up for that. That is part of the normal process. I didn't put it in here, but I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. We did have our LCAP approved without any problems. And again, we work with LACO throughout that process so that those revisions end up being very minimal. And so they, like I said, it's usually just a point of clarification. We give them the feedback they need, and then the LCAP gets approved by the county and the state.
All right. Thank you very much for your presentation, and kudos to the staff. You guys are doing a great job. A lot of information. I know you guys are working hard throughout the year, so thank you for your hard work, and kudos to you and to all your staff that they're doing a great job. Thank you. Thank you. All right. All right. I think that'd be it, Mr. Nian. And I just want to say once again, thank you very much for your leadership on that community workforce agreement. And I know you fought really hard for the district. And as you heard, I think you might have got a little bit better than Chris did on that. So good job for the district. Right. All right. We will move to adjournment. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Anybody want to stay and discuss anything more? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Seeing none, so moved. We're closed. See you next week.